Morning. I am here to welcome you all to our National Meeting Day for 2013. Today is a day for learning and sharing, both from, I suppose, the people who will present here to you today, but also from each other. I know that everyone speaks about how invaluable it is when people get together, that they get to share experiences and speak with each other and learn from each other. And I know from chatting to many of you, there's lots of experiences and good stories and conversations to be had. The theme of this year is being active and interactive. So we're trying to keep things as positive as possible and as engaging as possible. We wanted to put a program together that looked at ways for people to remain involved and connected in the world that's around them, despite the fact that obviously MS does bring some limitations and challenges to that world. We hope that by the end of the day you'll have some very practical ideas to bring home, and that that they'll help you to remain active or interactive in your personal work and family life. We are honoured to have some wonderful guests with us here today. Dr. Susan Coote, who's a firm supporter of MS Ireland, but also is on the board of MS Ireland. But she will be discussing practical strategies to remain active. In the afternoon, we have Professor Alan Thompson, who will be joining us from London, but he's obviously a huge supporter of MS Ireland as well, and he will speak to us about the growing research in progressive forms of MS. And we're really excited today to have a kind of a different style of presentation. So you can see beside me we have the couches. So we're trying to do a little bit of, Tubridy or what, I don't know what it is. Not an X Factor anyway. So there's nobody singing. You'll be glad to know. Although you never know what that crew will do over there now on that table. But we're very excited about that. And to host this for us is our chef, blogger and MS campaigner Travis Gleeson, with contributions from some new and some, I was going to say old faces, but they are far from, and I don't want to be insulting anybody at 11 o'clock in the morning, some beautiful faces at the table over there. They include Anne-Marie MacDade, who's all decked out in the Ireland gear, and she'll tell you a little bit about that, Grace O'Sullivan, Willika Coote and Mark Mitchell. So that's the team over there. They'll all be talking to you later on with this new type of session that we're looking at. And today is also, I suppose, an extra special day in the fact that we hold our presentations of our awards. We have 3 awards in the Society: the MS Person of the Year, MS Carer of the Year, and MS Volunteer of the Year. So we will be giving out those awards later on, and we have the Galway Rose joining us for that. So that will be lovely. Today also we have some business to attend to, so we will hold our AGM at the end of the day, and we will also hold a council meeting. So that will all be throughout the day. Without holding you for much longer, I appeal to you to get involved as much as possible today while I put on the slides. Oh, sorry, I've just pressed a button here now and it didn't change on the screen up there, so that's okay. But I really would encourage you to get involved as much as possible and to engage with each other and meet new people from the different branches and regions and other people with MS, because I think, as I say, that's a really important part of the day. I'm delighted to introduce you to our MC, who's Aidan, who you've just met, but to give you some context, he is the Regional Coordinator here for the West of Ireland for MS Ireland. He's also our Services Development Manager, but we also call him Mr. Getting the Balance Right, because he was the person who instigated the Physiotherapy Getting the Balance Right programme with Dr. Susan Coote. So without further ado, I do want to just pass you over to have a wonderful day. I know there's some Cork people here today, so fair play to you, because it's a huge commitment in light of what's happened today. I don't know, is there any Clare people? Oh, now you see, oh look, I see you now. I know the last meeting I was at, I was told I was given some apologies from the Clare people, but now we're Cork and Clare, so there'll be a bit of rivalry anyway. So it's great to see, but it's great to see everybody from, I know you're from the 4 corners, that you have travelled for today, and we genuinely do appreciate that. So all that's left for me to do is say enjoy the rest of the presentations. I hope you have an enjoyable day, and we'll see you throughout the
research around exercise, MS, and all sorts of other good stuff. So, Susan.
Thank you, Aidan. I'm not going to stand here because I don't think you'd see me. So I think I might, and my roving microphone is where, now the cameraman's not going to love me because I'm going to wander all over the place, sorry. So as Aidan said, I've been involved with the MS Society for about, I think it must be 6 years, a long time anyway. And it's been a very positive association. I'm a physio by trade. I worked in an MS service in Tala in my early years as a clinician. And I've been working in the University of Limerick now for the last 10 years. And the focus of my research while I'm there has been on exercise in MS and looking at different ways of making people more physically active. This is squeaking a bit. Can we turn it down? Okay, great. Okay, so are my slides there, Jason?
Yes, they are. Just
Lovely.
1 second.
There we go. We're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so what I want to do today is talk about being active and being more interactive, and by being active, being more interactive with the environment and your lives and whatever you want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about why you all need to be, well, why all of us, me included, need to be more active. What are the benefits of being active, specifically for people living with MS? Thinking about how would you get started if you're not already active now? How will you get started? What should you do? How much should you do? How often should you be active? And think of other factors that you need to consider, specifically because of your MS diagnosis. But I think one of the important things is really, for me, how do you keep going? So I have great intentions every new year, and I think, right, this is the year and I'm going to be active and fit and healthy. But it doesn't last very long. So I think I'm trying to give you some helpful tips. I'm very conscious that there's a wide range of abilities around the room. So I'm going to try and give examples for everybody in the room. So bear with me as I go through that. So why should I become more active? Now this is the only negative slide that I'm going to present today. And I don't want you to get scared by this, but I suppose I want you to realize the importance of being active. Because unfortunately, when you have a diagnosis of MS, it doesn't mean that you are immune to all of the other health problems that we all suffer from. So we know that being active is really important. Around the world, there's an increasing emphasis on physical activity. And globally, inactivity is now listed as the 4th highest cause of death around the world. So behind cancer, behind cardiovascular disease, inactivity, being inactive is a big problem. Now the problem specifically for people with MS is that people with MS are less active than everybody else. So instantly you're starting from the back foot, so to speak. Now, this is a really a very new area to look at, but what people have been thinking about is whether people with MS are, because of being inactive, because of all of the different symptoms, at risk of more cardiovascular disease. So cardiovascular disease is things like stroke and heart attack. And unfortunately, people with MS are more at risk of these problems than everybody else. But the key thing for me, and the thing that I want to help you change today, is that we know that all these cardiovascular risks are linked to inactivity. So hopefully by becoming more active, we can do that. Now, that's at the end of the negativity stuff. The rest is all positive. We're moving on from there. And I don't want to scare you, but I just need you to realize that it is important to become more active and to be physically active. So the good news, that was the bad news. The good news is that there's a recent study by a group in Germany. Now, when I was in college, I like to think it's not that long ago. It's nearly 20 years, but it's not that long ago at all. We were taught as physios, well, actually, people with MS should take it easy. They shouldn't, they should rest. Now, that has changed. We've come about 180-degree turn, and now we know that exercise can be very beneficial. But there's a really interesting paper by a group in Germany that have looked at people with MS who are active. And actually, people with MS who are active have less relapses, which is a new way of thinking and a very different way of thinking than we were thinking 10 years, 15 years ago. And all of these other studies are groups of researchers who have pulled together all of the studies in an area and done what's called a systematic review and looked, okay, if we take all of the different results from all of the different studies, pull them together, what do they tell us? So the good news is that exercise has a positive effect on mobility, and we know that mobility limitations are one of the key problems with MS. The good news is that exercise has a positive effect on quality of life. It also has a positive effect on fatigue, and that's a really important finding, because I think fatigue is one of those things that you can get into a vicious circle with, that you're feeling fatigued, so you do less, but then because you do less, you're actually getting unfit, and then because you're unfit, you're more fatigued. So the interesting thing is that if you can find a way of managing fatigue, and I'm going to hopefully give you some strategies around that this morning, exercising and being physically active actually has a positive effect on fatigue, and studies have shown that people's fatigue have improved after exercise. And certainly with the Getting the Balance Right results, we saw that very clearly, that a lot of people significantly reduced the fatigue that they were having. The really, really new area of research is around neural protection and neural repair. So neural protection is exactly that, protecting your nervous system against further damage. And repair is obviously the recovery after relapse. And the really, really interesting thing, and the very exciting thing for me as a physiotherapist, is that there's a whole new line of research that says that actually exercise can help both protect and repair the central nervous system in the brain. And there's been a lot of work in the area of Alzheimer's and exercise, and there's been a lot of work looking at the benefits of exercise for people with Alzheimer's, and it's that same protective effect, or that same reparative effect, that is starting to emerge in the MS literature. And the last area that has a significant body of evidence is that exercise has a positive effect on memory, which is another interesting one. So if people asked to do arithmetic, sequential subtraction tasks, or various other different tasks that involve memory, they're actually better after a bout of exercise. And I personally know that exercise is very beneficial for my own mood, but also there's a lot of studies that show that exercise can have a positive effect on depression, both in people with MS and also people who are living with depression. So hopefully you'll see from this is that there's lots and lots of good news. There's lots of research evidence to say that it is beneficial to be active and to exercise. So let's think about how we can get started and how I can help you on that journey of becoming more active. Now, the good thing is that physical activity is more than exercise. I think all of us think, oh, I must exercise. And that's actually not the case. It's actually much more that you must be more active, all right? So physical activity can encompass things like leisure time physical activity, so getting out onto the soccer pitch with your mates and kicking a football about, playing with kids, playing with your grandkids, games and sports fall into that. It's also transportation. So if for one day a week you decided to walk to work rather than get in the car, or if you decided one day a week that you were going to take the stairs and not the lift, that is some very, very simple ways that you can become more physically active without having to go and exercise or be part of a gym. Physical activity is also those occupational things you do. I know sometimes for me, one of the best ways to get out frustrations is a good hoover, and you can hoover really aggressively, and it's amazing what you can do. And you can build up a good sweat hoovering. So hoovering is physical activity. Brushing your kitchen floor is physical activity. All of these things are activity. The key thing is that they have to be done quick enough, or aggressive is the wrong word, but strongly enough that you're getting out of breath and that you're working your muscles hard. So physical activity, or I'm going to call it exercise, but exercise is much more than going to the gym. Exercise is all of these things that we do in our everyday life. The planned exercise is probably what we're most familiar with. The things that the going to the gym or going to the class or you're doing your walk, those are the kind of the planned exercise structures. But so what I want you to think about today is becoming more physically active, of moving more. And the key thing is do less sitting. If we all did less sitting, we would be on the road to becoming more physically active. And doing less sitting can be incredibly beneficial for us all. There's lots of studies to say that actually sitting is bad. When you sit, your muscles just they relax and they stop working. I work with a physiologist in the University of Limerick. His work is all about sitting and what sitting does to our bodies. So if you do one thing today, after you leave today, I would like you to do less sitting, all right? And just remember that physical activity is much more than exercise. You don't have to go to a gym to be physically active. Hoovering is exercise, okay? The key thing is that you need to do something to enjoy. So if somebody said to me tomorrow, right, Susan, you're going to stand on a treadmill in a gym for 30 minutes every day, I'd say, I am not. Now, what I will do is I will take my dog and I will go and walk in the forest because that's something I enjoy. So it could be your physical activity could be finding one of the Slinas Launcher walks and walking there. It could be like me, taking your dog to the forest. It could be that you have a stationary bike in your living room and that when Coronation Street is on, you ride your stationary bike. One of the things I'm going to talk about a lot is how we can build physical activity into our routines. Because if we don't build it into our routines, it's not going to happen. We're not going to sustain it. It could be that you go to a local yoga class with your friends. And again, there's no reason that if you have MS that you shouldn't do yoga. I'm going to talk about lots of activities that are really, really available to you all. You could swim or do aqua aerobics. You could do a Getting the Balance Right class. You could prepare a meal in standing and sitting. I think some of you might have perching stools that you use in your kitchen. If you spent less time sitting on that stool and more time standing, that would contribute to your physical activity. If you're a wheelchair user, you could park your wheelchair a little bit further away and walk to it and increase that distance you do each time. And that's helping you to be more active. If you're a scooter user, you could maybe bring your walker with you and go as far as you can before you need your scooter, rather than just going straight to the scooter. You could do a Pilates class or a Tai Chi class, or you could just get out there and play soccer on the green or do whatever you want to do with your mates. So there is no restrictions. There's nothing that I can say that, oh, if you have MS, you can't do that. Definitely not. You can do anything you want, but make sure it's something you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep it up. One of the other things to consider is to do something that is linked to your goals, okay? So I'm focusing on balance first because it's a nice example. So if your main problem with your MS is that you have difficulty balancing, you might want to consider a yoga class if you're somebody who maybe walks with a stick or walks without a stick. If you can see, all of these poses are focusing on balance. And we know from the results of the Getting the Balance Right studies that people both in the Strand A groups and the Strand B, so people who don't use a stick and people who use a walking aid, both groups improve their balance as a result of yoga. And yoga can be modified, so don't feel like you're going to be made stand on one leg with your leg behind your... I go to yoga, I don't do that pose with the leg behind the ear, so don't feel that you're going to have to do that. A lot of the yoga poses can be modified, so you can do them in sitting or you can do them on a mat so that you're not at risk of falling. Pilates is another good form of exercise class that focuses on what's known as core stability, so that working the muscles around your abdomen. And again, a lot of the Pilates exercises are done in lying or done in a ball, so if you're somebody who has difficulty balancing and that yoga poses in standing seem a little bit scary, then Pilates might be a good one, because a lot of the Pilates classes are done on mats on the floor, so there's very little risk of falling. But it's a good way to, again, strengthen around your core, so we know we need the core stability to balance. Tai Chi is another activity that I want to throw out there for you. There's not very much research evidence about it, but if you look at Tai Chi, it's about holding postures, it's about sustaining postures. There's a lot of evidence, a lot of research studies that look at Tai Chi in people who are older who fall, and it's had very, very effective results. So again, it's another thing to consider. Moving away from those kind of exercise classes to just thinking about physical activity. If you were to stand more, it would be of benefit. So I've got a photograph of a lady there standing in front of the kitchen sink. As a physio, I think kitchen sinks are great. They don't fall over. They're really, really stable. You can usually get a good grip on them. So it might be that while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, that you stand at the kitchen sink and you maybe try some exercises on your toes, or you try lifting one leg. How many times a day do you switch on the kettle? A lot. Depends how much tea you drink. If every time you switched on the kettle, you stood and did some practice and balance exercises, you would have a huge amount more physical activity than you're doing now. And because you're incorporating it into your routine, because you're switching on the kettle so often, that should hopefully mean that you're better able to sustain it and keep it going. There's another exercise there, holding onto the chair. That chair is a little bit spindly for my liking. I'd like something a little bit more solid, a good solid armchair. But again, if you're somebody who's a wheelchair user, even just standing for a few more times during the day would be incredibly beneficial, rather than sitting. So coming back to my message, sit less. Stand more if you're a wheelchair user, or if you're somebody who uses a rollator or crutches. And also, couldn't talk about balance without talking about physio and talking about exercises in a physio gym with the support of parallel bars with different equipment. The key thing is if you want your balance to get better, you have to challenge your balance. Now, just to say that it's important for all of you that you don't go out there now and start practicing your balance. You need to just make sure that you're safe. But hopefully I've given you some ideas about things that you can do to work on your balance. So again, on the same theme of doing something that's linked to your goals, if one of your problems is weakness, then you need to think about something that's linked to your goals. I don't know about you, but a lot of my friends are doing kettlebells classes. I'm tempted to try it just to see. But the thing that I think as a neurological physio, as a physio who works with people with MS and stroke, the thing that appeals to me about kettlebells is it's whole body exercise. So it's not just one single limb doing stretching, and it's very functional movement. It's everyday movements that we do. So I think that's worth a look if it's something you're interested in. Traditional gym work is very definitely beneficial. There's a lot of research evidence coming from particularly the group in Denmark that says that standard gym equipment is very beneficial. The other benefit of the gym equipment is that we're taking away those problems with balance. So you could sit on the leg press machine so that you're not having to worry about your balance as you're exercising. Tai Chi, Pilates and yoga, I've included them in there as well because they do work on balance, but also they work on strength because you're holding a position and that you're working on strength. And again, physio exercises, and remembering that even if you're a wheelchair user, there's no reason that you shouldn't do some exercises with weights. Now, one of the kind of the tricks of the trade, I'm sure all of you have a supply cupboard that have tins of beans and tins of canned tomatoes and tins of fruit. Tins of fruit make wonderful resistance weights. So you don't need to go to a gym, you don't need to go out and buy dumbbells, but you can use those things that you have in your home as your weights to do your exercises, okay? And the principle is that moving is good. And the other principle I'm going to talk about a lot is starting small and building up. So you're not going to start with the catering sized tin of tomatoes. You're going to start with the little half-sized tin of tomatoes and build up gently. But very simple things that you have around the home are really, really useful. One of the things that I would have used a lot is putting something into a sock, and then you can tie the sock around your hand. So if you haven't got the grip to hold on to something, you can use a sock to help tie things around the end, your ankle or your wrist. So you can create strength training in your own home. You don't have to go to a gym. Gym environment is not for everybody, but it's certainly strengthening can be very beneficial. So if your goal or your problem is walking endurance, and a lot of people talk to me about that when they start walking, they do fine, but maybe 2 or 3 or 5, 10 minutes into the walk, that's when their symptoms start to get worse. To me, that's an endurance problem. So it's not a problem about being able to activate muscles, but it's about being able to keep muscles active. And when we think about endurance, so if we want to be able to walk for longer, we have to practice walking for longer, all right? I've put up a picture of Nordic walking poles. I have a colleague in physio in UL who is doing some work with people with arthritis. I like the idea of these poles that they're really, for a start, they're really fashionable at the minute. Everybody's using them. If you're somebody who maybe is resistant to using a stick but whose balance gets a little bit worse the more you exercise, these poles are a great idea because they're giving you some stability. So if you start to get wobbly as you're walking for longer, those poles can give you great stability. So I think they're definitely worth a try. It's not something I've seen used most, but to me it makes a lot of sense. Cycling, get out there on your bicycle. There's no reason that if you have the balance and strength that you shouldn't go cycling. But also, static bikes are great. A lot of people will have static bikes at home and they're usually in the ironing room or hidden down back. But get them out and put them in the living room. Watch. If you have a TV program that you watch every day, if you're a Coronation Street fan or you're an EastEnders fan, or ride your bike for the first half between the start and the commercial break. Or maybe on the first day, ride for 5 minutes. The next day, and your goal could be that you can ride the bike for the whole, up to the first commercial break, and then in a month's time, the whole way through Coronation Street. Swimming is a really good activity, and it's a good activity particularly for people who have problems with heating up. So when we exercise, the natural body's response when we exercise is that we get warmer. And for people with MS, this can be a problem because as you get warmer, your nerves don't work as well as they normally do. So if you're somebody who, when you start walking, you're doing fine, but maybe as you get into the walk, you can't get your heel to the ground, you're getting the foot slapping to the ground, you develop a foot drop. If you're somebody who gets more tingling as you're walking, swimming can be a really good one because it dissipates the heat. So the water is cool, so it keeps your body cooler. So if you're somebody who, when you exercise, it really doesn't work because your symptoms get too bad, think about swimming, think about that cooler environment. The other thing is to think about, and again, these are either available in the gym or at home, but things like a rowing machine where you're seated, so you don't have to worry about your balance. You can focus on your strength and your endurance. That can be a really good thing. I was talking to somebody last night or this morning about the elliptical trainers are the ones where your feet are on the pedals that go this way. So if, for example, you had trouble with foot drop when you were going for a long time, or your knees got weaker or your balance got worse, something like the elliptical trainer would be really good for endurance because that's taking care of all of that. You don't have to worry about your legs you don't have to worry about your foot position or your balance because that's all supported by that. So hopefully those are some ideas. But do you know what the best form of physical activity and the most widely practiced form of physical activity is? Walking. So get out there, walk to the end of the lane, walk to the Slína Sláinte, get out onto the pram in Salt Hill. Walking is free and it's incredibly effective and incredibly beneficial. So don't disregard it. And if you're somebody who doesn't walk very much at the minute, simply walking from your front door to your kitchen could be a really, really good goal that you're trying to do a little bit more. But as I was saying, make sure that you're working hard, that it's not a dawdle, it's a walk. It's a purposeful walk. Okay, so lots of people ask me how much should I do, and I can't give you a straight answer to that because it's going to be different for everybody. It's, as we know, MS is different for everybody who's living with MS, and different symptoms, different combinations of symptoms, different balance abilities. The key thing is that you listen to your body. Your body will tell you if you've done too much, and if you've done too much, you take a break, you take a rest day, but you go back and you just do less than you did that time before. The key thing is if you're not physically active at the minute, start small and work big. Nobody would say, right, I'm just going to run a marathon tomorrow. And for some of you guys, for your bodies, walking a kilometre could be the equivalent of running a marathon. But marathon trainers start small and work big. So start with something small. Start by doing a little bit more than you're doing now and gradually build it up. If you go out tomorrow and do far too much, you'll feel like crap and you'll go, oh, Jesus, that exercise is not for me. It is for you, but you have to listen to your body and you have to start small, okay? So do a little bit more than you're doing at the minute. Gradually build it up. Ask your body each time, is that okay? A little bit more, and gradually build up either the time that you're exercising or how hard you're exercising. One of the most important things about physical activity, and one of the things that distinguishes people who stay active from those who aren't active, is to set a goal. So have a target in mind, but have a realistic target in mind. So if you're somebody who's not at all active now, your target might be, I'm going to stand 5 times during the commercial break of Coronation Street. I'm not quite sure why I keep coming back to Coronation Street. I'm not a fan. I don't want you to think that. I'm not getting any royalties from Coronation Street. But pick something that you do. So something that you do every day. So if you're inactive at the minute, your goal for the next week could be to stand every time you put the kettle on for the duration that you're waiting for the kettle to boil. That's a really good goal. It's a really achievable goal. It's more than you're doing now. It could be that your goal is to walk to the end of the laneway and back. Or it could be that your goal is to walk the full length of the prom. Now, if you haven't walked the prom in 20 years, don't try and walk the full length of the prom tomorrow, because then you'll be told, Jesus, that's Susan Coote one, she has me dead. No, don't do that. Walk a little bit. Then the next day, walk a little bit further. Then the next day, walk a little bit further. Start small and build gradually. Don't do too much too soon. If you do too much, don't give up. You just say, do you know what? I did too much today. I'm going to do a little bit less the next time. I'm going to have a day off and take a break. The key thing is to do more than you're doing now. And I put my hand up and say that's me as well. I should be walking my dog 5 days a week, not 1, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. So all of us could do more than we're doing now. So I want to talk you through some new guidelines. So for physios and for sports scientists, it's been very difficult for us to answer that question of how much should I do, because we haven't been able to answer that directly. These are new MS physical activity guidelines that were brought out by the Canadian MS Society. If you're interested, I'm going to get Tara to put the link up on the website. Now, just to say that these are for people with minimum to moderate disabilities. So if you're a rollator user or a wheelchair user, these probably aren't for you. We don't have enough of the research evidence to be able to make the guidelines for that. So the guidelines say that you should do 30 minutes of aerobic activity twice a week and strength training exercises twice a week. So what it's saying is it's a balance between endurance and strength. So if you think of it, for everyday life, we do need that balance. So if you want to carry the shopping in from the car, you need that strength to do that. If you want to walk half an hour around the supermarket with the trolley while you're doing that, then you need endurance. So for life, we need a balance of strength and endurance. We need both. So this is why the guidelines are saying that a combination of both is good. And they say, based on the research evidence, that meeting these guidelines may reduce fatigue, improve mobility, and enhance elements of health-related quality of life. So if we look at the World Health Organization physical activity guidelines for everybody, it's 5 times a week, 150 minutes of aerobic activity. So this is saying, it's acknowledging that you don't need to do as much, but that you need to be working. So it's kind of day on, day off, day on, day off, if you look at it across a week, and a combination of strength training and aerobic activity. The good news is that 30 minutes doesn't have to be together. It could be 10 minutes, take a break, 10 minutes, take a break. It could be 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunchtime, and 10 minutes in the evening. So again, if you're somebody who hasn't exercised or hasn't been physically active for 30 minutes for a long time, don't do it all together. Do a little bit, take a break, do a little bit, take a break, and gradually build up, as I was saying earlier. What the guidelines say about people who are currently physically inactive is that you need to start at a lower intensity, a lower frequency, so less often, and lower duration, so for less time, okay? So it's really reinforcing what I was saying about starting small and gradually building it up, okay? Gradually increase the duration, gradually increase the frequency, and gradually work with the intensity. A lot of people ask me, how do I know so if we come back to walking, which is a very accessible activity, it's free, how do I know if my walking is hard enough? If you can talk comfortably to the person you're walking with, you're not walking fast enough. So when you're walking, to make it really, really beneficial, okay, if you don't walk at all, walking is good, and walking is a really good start. If you're somebody who walks at the minute and you're wondering, is it enough? If you can carry on a conversation easily with the person next door, it's not hard enough. You need to go faster, okay? So you should be that little bit out of breath as you're talking to the person next door to you, okay? That's what your goal is. That's what you're aiming for. You're not going to do that. If you're somebody who hasn't gone for a walk in a long time, don't do that tomorrow. But that's what you should be aiming for, to be not able to have a proper conversation as you're walking. So thinking about particular considerations about MS in particular. I've talked about this a little bit, but there's a phenomenon called Uthoff's phenomenon. And it was Uthoff's phenomenon was what led us to think that being active was bad in the first place. So Uthoff's phenomenon is where when you exercise, you build up heat. And when you build up heat, your nervous system says, no can do, I'm not working in this temperature. And you start to get worsening of symptoms. So for people who have Uthoff's phenomenon or who are heat sensitive, some of the tricks that you can think about doing is if you're somebody who likes to go to the gym and there's a bike beside the window or there's a bike tucked in the back corner with no air, go for the bike beside the window so that you're getting the cooling breeze. If there's a fan, ask, can you have the fan there? So again, the fan is dissipating the heat away from you. One of the tricks is take a bottle of water and put it in the freezer. Take it out half an hour before you exercise so that as you're exercising, you're drinking that really, really ice cold water. So you're cooling your core, which again will help keep your body temperature down. And as I talked about before, swimming can be really good if you're heat tolerant. Now, swimming can be good, but unfortunately the changing rooms are so hot that they can actually sometimes be bad. Now, one of the things I would say to you is choose the pool. What you don't want to do is go to the Enable Ireland pool or the St. Gabriel's pool in Limerick because they're heated higher than most pools. So you want the county council pool, which you can be sure is not going to be heated any more than it needs to be. But you don't want, so just be careful in the selection of the pool that you're going to. If you have heat sensitivity, now there are some people with MS who love the heat. So if you love the heat, go for the hot pool, go to Lanzarote, no bother at all. But if you're somebody who suffers from heat sensitivity or that heat sensitivity prevents you from exercising at the minute, pick the coldest pool that you can find. I talked a little bit about fatigue earlier, and I think it's a difficult one because when you're feeling so absolutely exhausted that you can't do anything, it's really hard to think about exercising. But the key message is if you persist, it will get better. We know from lots and lots of studies from around the world that exercising is beneficial. The key thing is to start small and build it up. So if you're somebody who, because of your fatigue, you're relatively physically inactive, don't go and do too much because then you're going to feel more fatigued and you're going to feel worse. Set a small, achievable goal that is more than you're doing now and gradually increase it. There are some studies to say that if you have fatigue, remember I talked about the 30 minutes doesn't have to be in 30 minutes, it can be spread across the day. There's some studies suggest that if you're somebody who suffers from fatigue, that you might do a little bit 3 times a day rather than a chunk of exercise. But also think about what is better for you and what time of the day are you better. What time of the day do you have less symptoms? Again, some people like to exercise in the morning, some people like to exercise in the evening, but just work out what's right for you, listen to your body. The other thing to consider is that sometimes there's a study, again from the group in Denmark, Ulrich Dalgas's group, to say that if you're somebody who suffers a lot from fatigue and you want to become more physically active, then think of doing strength training rather than those endurance things. So those short bouts of strength training, because you don't get as hot when you're doing strength training as you do when you're doing endurance training. So strength training might be something that's better if you particularly suffer from fatigue or from heat sensitivity. So thinking about balance, I think balance is a difficult one because if we want to improve balance, we have to challenge balance. So it's a toss-up between being safe but also challenging your balance, and it's a judgment you're going to have to make or you're going to have to work with your physiotherapist to make. But think about using equipment. The stationary bike I talked about. If you want to work on endurance but you don't want to worry about your balance at the same time, think about the elliptical trainer in the gym. So rather than the treadmill, the trainer where your feet are always in contact with the surface. I'm not doing a good example of it, but I think you know what I mean. It's got handles. Think about exercising in front of the kitchen sink that's really, really good and stable. Think about working with your physio to find a set of exercises that is safe but still manages to challenge your balance. A lot of people have problems with sensation. One of the things that's really difficult is if you're going to the gym or you want to know how hard you're working, people say, well, you take your sensation. You take your pulse. If you've got no feeling in your fingertips, you can't take your pulse. So that example I gave of not being able to carry out a conversation as you're exercising, that's another way that you can see that you're working hard enough. So there's a breathlessness scale. So if you do go to a gym, sometimes the treadmills have little things that you put onto your ear or onto your fingertip that tell you your heart rate. If they don't have that, use breathlessness or it's called perceived exertion. So if you think you're working hard, you probably are working hard, basically. Think about the timing. So we know the guidelines say 2 days aerobic, 2 days strength training. Make sure you're not doing your aerobic training or your endurance training, your long walks on the 2 days beside each other, that you're splitting them up. And think about that morning or evening balance depending on what's best for you. Now, so a lot of you will have problems with spasms or high tone is the physio term for it. But the important thing with that is if you're exercising is to just think about, are you doing it as you would normally do? So if you have one leg that is weak and has some stiffness, just think, is that leg moving in the same direction? Is your knee pointing in the same direction? So let's say you're doing a squatting exercise, just think about, is that knee doing the same action as the other one? Because sometimes we all move in a similar way because our joints are designed to work in that way. So sometimes if you're moving in what as a physio I would term an abnormal movement pattern or a compensatory movement pattern, sometimes you can put all kinds of stresses and strains on your joints. And certainly as you begin your new exercise journey, I don't want you to be put off by that. So just think about, is your good side moving? Is your bad side working in the same way as your good side? And just think about the pattern of movement that you're doing. And if you are somebody who has problems with stiffness or spasticity, stretching is really, really beneficial. And if you stretch before you exercise and a little bit more than normal, so all of us, if we were to go to the gym, people would be saying stretch, but stretch a little bit more than normal if spasms or stiffness in your limbs is a particular problem. How do you keep going? This is the $100 million question that sports scientists around the globe are still currently trying to find out. But what I've done is I've pulled together a lot of what the literature says about it. So the key thing is to set a goal. Set a goal because there's nothing better than achieving that goal and saying, do you know what, I was doing nothing and now doing it. And I think it's really interesting because as a physio, sometimes we set people programs and they go away and you don't see them for a while. And I see huge differences. And you ask the person, well, how are you getting on? And they say, well, kind of the same. And actually, when you point out that difference, it's huge. So write down where you are, where you're starting, because you will be amazed how much you change. Because I think it sneaks up on you. If you're exercising every day, it can sneak up on you, that change. So make sure that you write it down, that you keep a kind of a log of where you started and where you are now. The pedometers, that's a microphone pack, not a pedometer, but you can get little pedometers in cornflake boxes sometimes. They're great because they just give you a starting point. They say, okay, so I took 800 steps today. Now, again, if you took 800 steps today, your goal might be to add another 100 for the next week. If you took 5,000 steps today, that's great, but your goal might be to add about 10%. But they're a really good way of kind of logging. I wore a pedometer for the first time 2 years ago, and I was astounded by how little I moved. When I go to work, I sit at a desk. I didn't used to take the stairs, I confess now. I now take the stairs because when I wore the pedometer, it was like, oh my God, that's appalling. And you're a physiotherapist. You can't be telling everybody else to be active. So it's interesting just to get a log of where you are. Take it one small step at a time. I've said that a lot, and I hope that message is getting through. Do a little bit more than you're doing now and gradually build it up. Don't do too much too soon. Plan your week, which is an easy thing for me to say, but definitely when I plan my week, I get my exercise, I get my walks in I'm much more likely to get my walks in than I do if I don't. There will be bad days, and the important thing is that you have a plan for a bad day. So if your plan for a bad day might be, okay, if I have a day that I'm really fatigued and I can't exercise, that's fine. I'm going to take that as a rest day, but I am going to exercise the next day. So it's just to have a plan. So if things go wrong, what are you going to do? Because when things go wrong, sometimes you forget what you need to do. So if you plan beforehand as to what you're going to do. One of the things that came out from getting the balance right is people talking about exercising in a group, and I couldn't let the other people down. I have to go. For me, if I pay for the class at the start, I have to keep going back. So things like that are strategies that you can find. Find somebody that you're walking with, and then it's really important that you show up, work with them. Sign a contract with your family. It might be about getting your whole family moving. Maybe it's about sitting down with your kids and saying, right, we're all going to walk to school one day a week. The factors associated with success are, the biggest one is this term called self-efficacy, a psychological term called self-efficacy. And that basically means self-belief. So if you start out saying, do you know what, I can do this, you're much more likely to succeed than if you start saying, nah, I don't know if I can do this. So it's a hard thing to find, but self-efficacy, that belief that you can do it, that you know what the benefits are. Hopefully I've given you a sense of what you can expect to see if you become more physically active, but more importantly, what you can expect to see if you're not physically active. Set goals, plan, be part of a community, but the most important thing is to do something that you enjoy. So should you be more active? Should we all be more active? Should everybody in Ireland be more active? Very definitely yes. How are we going to achieve that? Well, first of all, we're going to do less sitting. If all of us after today did 5 minutes less sitting, then my job is done, okay? Do something you enjoy. It has to be something you enjoy. It has to be something that you can fit into your routine. So something that you do every day as it is, switching on the kettle, watching a TV show, taking the kids to school, whatever it is, there's something that you do every day. Fit in your extra bit of standing, your extra bit of walking, or your exercise routine into that. Do something that's linked to your goals and set realistic goals. So set that, today I did nothing. For the last week I did nothing. Next week I'm going to stand 3 times more. Next week I'm going to walk the length of the Slinas Launcha. Next week I'm going to exercise for 20 minutes in the gym. Next week I'm going to swim twice. listen to your body and do what's right for you. And I can't say definitively that that's what you should do, because you all know your own bodies yourselves. But listen to your body. Your body will very definitely tell you if you've done too much. But persist. Acknowledge that if you have a bad day, that you need to just step back a little bit, do a little bit less. But believe you can do it, and most of all, enjoy it and have fun. Thank you very much. Have time for a couple of questions, and Tara, Ara and Aisling have roving microphones there if anybody would like to ask a question.
Hello, just one question. A circulation booster, are they any help?
My answer to that question is I don't know. I've never seen any research studies about them. I see them on the telly a lot. I think that probably, so all I can say is that the thing that normally gets your circulation going in your feet is your calf muscle, and your calf muscle is activated when you are walking. So personally, I would think that it would be much better to get up and go for a walk than to sit and use a circulation booster. Any other questions?
Hello. Just let me compliment you on your fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I think you just made it very clear how important exercise is, and I suppose people would miss, if they exercise, they feel they're going to be exhausted, but you have made it so the opposite, that exercise in time will help you get over some of that exhaustion and make you feel better. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Tara. Has anybody any suggestions about somebody who would like to go swimming but who wears a catheter?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. I think that would probably be a question for one of the MS nurses. Or Tara's going to come with the mic. Alexis.
Okay, thanks. I've asked the same question of several people, and I've got differing answers. One from a urologist who said, stick a bit of Vaseline around the catheter hole, the catheter site, sure you'll be all right. But I wonder what wonderful collection of bacteria inhabit a swimming pool.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that.
Yeah.
You can get the equivalent of a cork for your catheter. Okay, disconnect the bag or the valve, put a cork on, and you can seal up the whole thing with a sheet of adhesive plastic onto your tummy.
Okay.
And for gentlemen, I'd recommend shaving the tummy beforehand.
The practical tips. Thank you, Alexis.
I've done that a few times, but
Yeah.
it's...
I'll try and find out, because I know that there's kids with cerebral palsy who have hydrotherapy all the time, who have catheters and that kind of thing. So there must be an answer to it. We'll do some more research, but thank you, Alexis. That's very helpful.
Can I just add one more thing, Susan, to the question previously about exercising the calf muscles. Even if you have difficulty walking, I find just sitting and trying to curl your toes, it will give you enough
activation,
strengthening of the calf muscle. And you can do, there doesn't have to be much movement of the toe, as long as you pull and hold for as long as possible.
Exactly. So it's that contract, release, contract, release. It acts like a pump around the blood in your calf. So you know the way everybody's wearing those tight stockings on the plane, and that's because when you sit and you don't move your calf muscles, your circulation isn't as good, so people were tending to get clots. So even just up on your toes, lift your toes, up on your toes, lift your toes, that action, it's the switching the muscle on and off. So as you said, Alexis, even scrunching the toes, you're activating those same muscle groups, which is very effective for the muscle pump. Yeah. Are there any other questions down there? Yes, down the back.
I think I can exercise through walking and so on. But when I have to stop, it varies in distance
Okay.
from day to day. Often I get very lightheaded, and I find that quite dangerous. So, like you were saying, you can progress from one area, you know, keep going. But I mean, when you get lightheaded, shouldn't you just stop? And the thing is, why do you get lightheaded? And
that's a very good point.
How can you improve it?
What we know is that hydration when you're exercising is really important, and we know because of the bladder problems that people with MS have, a lot of people with MS don't drink enough, and sometimes that dizziness can be as simple as being dehydrated. So that's one thing to watch. I think it's something that I would say to your GP, because if you're dizzy all the time, if dizziness is an MS symptom, I think it's something I would say to your GP just in case there's something else going on, because I think we forget that, you know, again, as I said, that there can be other things going on that are not MS related. But certainly hydration is a key thing, and hydration can definitely make you feel dizzy. So keep an eye on that. But again, just check with the GP.
Things don't move or anything. It's just my head. Perhaps it's a step before being dizzy. I don't know. But
Possibly.
it's just, I don't know what I should do when I get lightheaded. Is it the thing, stop and just rest? But I mean, you might be in the middle of a walk and it's not that easy.
Yeah. I think the answer is, should you stop and take a break? Yes, because your body is telling you something. Yeah, take a break. Take 5 big deep breaths. Literally take 5, and then see how you get on again. Yeah.